So this is one of your major sort of themes, is this idea of selling your soul. And you've talked about how in education you're afraid we are selling our soul to the sort of false gods of standardized testing. Where else do you see in Vermont, where do you worry that we are potentially selling our souls? And does it always come back to money, or are there just other factions or influences where you're thinking that is not in keeping with Vermont values? And why should we care? What if Vermont values are in a state of flux? They're simply changing. It's progress.
Well, I have to, while I criticize Governor Shumlin for saying that every student ought to take algebra, that's just idiotic. I don't think every student ought to take algebra. I've never used algebra a day in my life, and I have 4 college degrees. I applaud Governor Shumlin for taking on the nuclear power industry and just saying, look, the owners of this plant, these are his words, the owners of this plant can't tell the truth. He's being euphemistic. What he's saying is they're lying. They lied about the tritium leaks. They lied to us. And we shouldn't expose our land, our milk, our cows, our citizens to the dangers of nuclear power, especially if the plant is in the hands of people who, quote unquote, can't tell the truth. That's Governor Shumlin. So I applaud him on that. On the other, I think he's just selling out to Obama. Obama wants a national curriculum. He wants his Secretary of Education to give marching orders to all the states, and Shumlin just took his cue from Obama and laughably, in my opinion, said every Vermont student should take algebra. No, I don't, to tell you the truth, of all the states in the country, Vermont's the most wholesome. I think Vermont doesn't have many problems. I don't think Vermont sells its soul to the god of money. Mm-hmm. Vermont stands up. In fact, Vermont Board of Education recently decided not to go with the Common Core curriculum, the new one that Obama wants everybody to take, and go back to No Child Left Behind, just because it did not approve of the manipulations, the manipulation of teachers, which was included as a prerequisite in the Common Core. That's courageous. Vermont's courageous. Vermont's always been courageous. We were a state that we never, well, let's put it this way. Slavery was outlawed in our Constitution. There were slaves in the state, but they were not legal. We're the first state to have a Jewish woman governor. We're the first state to have, I forget what same-sex
civil unions. Yeah.
Civil unions. We always do the right thing. We have the courage to stand up to the. We have the courage to stand up to the general opinion, and we aren't. We haven't sold our souls to money. Unfortunately, we've sold our souls, though, to this busybody federal government that's telling every school in America what it's got to teach. Very, very intrusive.
Well, what about those who would say that we have to have some way to measure the competency of our teachers and the achievement of our students? It's all far too much of a Wild West scenario that various students in one part of the country are being taught at a certain level and achieving at a certain rate, and others are at a far different level, and we need to come together as a country, and we need to be certain that we are grooming our students to compete on the worldwide market.
Well, look, there's two visions of teaching. One is the student's an empty drinking glass, you're the teacher, you're full of knowledge, and you pour knowledge into the student, and then the student pours the knowledge into a standardized test and shows you what it knows. That's a bunch of baloney. W.B. Yeats's vision of teaching is my idea of what teaching is. Teaching is about catching fire. Once you inspire one kid to like one thing about thinking or reading or writing or math, once they get excited about it, you can't stop them. That's what teaching should be about. I do not share the empty drinking glass philosophy of education. And the other thing is, until 15 years ago, you know, the theory is, oh, America has slipped. We used to be #1 in education. Now we're 47th in reading and writing and reading and math. Oh, woe is me. Well, until 15 years ago, we never measured the other countries in the country. We were first because there was nobody else measured. It's just in the last 15 years that we've had this measurement. We've probably always been 47th. And who cares? We're the country that produced Bill Gates and Steve Jobs. And in Vermont alone, Elisha Otis, Otis Elevator, John Deere Tractor, Joseph Smith, founder of the Church of Latter-day Saints, Justin Morrill, senator and founder of the land-grant colleges, and I forget who the last one is, all taught in Vermont public schools.
But not all taught within the last several decades.
No,
There's some who would say
no.
that you know, the face of education is changing radically, and the internet is a big part of that. So that it leads me to another question.
Well, I just want to tell you, if Georgia wants to teach its students a certain way, they should teach its students a certain way. And if Vermont wants to teach its students a certain way, it should teach its students a certain way. We don't need this homogenized, lockstep vision of education. The greatness of America is everybody's different. And as every mother knows, you cannot rush a rose. Not everybody in 9th grade is ready to be tested on 9th grade benchmarks for math and English. I graduated in the middle of my high school class. I was told I was not college material by my high school English teacher, high school guidance counselor. Well, I have 4 college degrees, and he's dead. He was wrong.
Is that causality? He's dead because he was wrong about Paul Keene.
No, adults should be opening doors for children, not closing them. If Georgia wants to teach its kids a certain way, let them teach them that way.